This should not exist, but it does. The oldest mummy ever discovered on Earth was not found in the land of pyramids, nor in the tombs of kings, nor in any place we associate with advanced civilization. It comes from a time before history, from a place where people were not supposed to know how to preserve the dead. And yet, the body is there, intact, deliberate, preserved with a precision that suggests intention, knowledge, and something we still don't fully understand. For centuries, we believed mummification began in ancient Egypt, a carefully developed ritual tied to religion, power, and the afterlife. It made sense. Complex societies create complex beliefs, and those beliefs lead to practices like preserving the dead. But then archaeologists uncovered something that didn't fit that narrative. Along the dry, coastal deserts of northern Chile, far from the Nile, far from any early empire, bodies began to emerge from the sand. Not naturally preserved, not accidental, but carefully prepared, modified, reconstructed. These were not simple burials. These were engineered. At first glance, the explanation seemed manageable. The region's extreme dryness could preserve organic material for thousands of years. Perhaps these were natural mummies, like those occasionally found in deserts. But that explanation quickly began to fall apart. The bodies had been opened, organs removed, bones reinforced with sticks, skin replaced, faces remodeled, sometimes even painted. This was not nature. This was design. And more importantly, it was ancient, older than the earliest Egyptian mummies by thousands of years. So now the mystery deepens. If these people were not part of a known advanced civilization, how did they develop such a complex process? The group responsible is known today as the Chinchorro culture, small communities of hunter-gatherers who lived along the Pacific coast over 7,000 years ago. They had no writing system, no monumental architecture, no visible hierarchy. By all traditional definitions, they were simple. And yet, what they created challenges that label entirely. The first layer of understanding suggests necessity. Life in this region was harsh, unpredictable. Infant mortality was high. Death was constant and close. Some researchers believe that the Chinchorro people began preserving their dead as a way to cope with loss, to maintain a connection with those who had passed. It's a compelling idea. Human emotion can drive powerful innovation. But there's a problem. The level of effort involved in these mummies is extreme. Entire bodies were dismantled and rebuilt. This wasn't a quick ritual. It required time, skill, and repeated practice. For a small, mobile group, this kind of investment doesn't quite add up. So we look deeper. A second layer begins to emerge, one rooted not just in culture, but in environment and biology. Studies of the region show unusually high levels of arsenic in the water, sources the Chinchorro relied on. Chronic exposure to arsenic can cause long-term health effects, including increased mortality, especially among infants. This could explain the emotional intensity surrounding death. But it may also explain something else. Constant exposure to death, especially of children, might have normalized the presence of the dead within daily life. The boundary between the living and the dead may have blurred. Preservation wasn't just about memory, it may have been about continuity. But even this doesn't fully resolve the mystery. Because the methods used by the Chinchorro were not static. Over generations, their mummification techniques became more sophisticated, more refined. Early examples are relatively simple. Later ones are intricate, almost artistic. This suggests not just repetition, but evolution, knowledge being passed down, improved, shared. Which raises another question. How does a society without formal structure sustain and develop such a specialized practice over centuries? Now we enter the territory of competing theories. 1. Possibility is that this knowledge was distributed, shared among the community rather than held by a specific class. Another theory suggests the existence of early specialists. Individuals who, while not formally recognized as elites, carried unique knowledge and skills. And then there is a more unsettling idea that this practice emerged not from gradual development, but from a sudden shift and external influence, an unknown trigger that accelerated their understanding of preservation. The evidence doesn't point clearly in any one direction. Each theory explains part of the picture, but none of them fully account for the precision, the consistency, and the longevity of the practice. And then, a breakthrough begins to reshape the conversation. Modern scientific analysis, radiocarbon dating, chemical composition studies, microscopic examination confirms that some of these mummies date back over 7,000 years. This places them among the oldest intentionally preserved human remains ever found. But more importantly, detailed analysis reveals something unexpected. The materials used, clay, ash, plant fibers, were selected and combined in ways that suggest experimentation. Trial and error. A process of learning. That feels almost systematic. And this is where the twist begins to take shape. Because what we're seeing may not just be early ritual behavior. It may represent one of the first known examples of applied biological understanding. Not in the way we define science today, but in a functional sense. They were observing decay, intervening in it, altering outcomes. They were, in a primitive but real way, studying the human body after death. But the deeper twist is this. Unlike later civilizations, where mummification was reserved for the elite, the Chincharo preserved everyone. Men, women, children, even infants. There was no hierarchy in death. No distinction of status. This wasn't about power or immortality for a select few. It was universal. Inclusive. Which challenges one of our most basic assumptions about early human societies, that complexity arises alongside inequality. Imagine living in a world where death is not hidden away, but present. Where the bodies of your ancestors remain with you, not as memories, but as physical realities. You see them, you touch them, you maintain them. The past is not something distant. It's something you carry with you. Literally. It changes how you think about time, about identity, about what it means to be human. And maybe that's the final insight. The oldest mummy on Earth is not just a scientific curiosity. It's a message from a time before history. From people who understood something we've largely forgotten. That the boundary between life and death is not as clear as we like to believe. That memory can be physical. That connection can persist beyond what we consider the end. We often look at the past as primitive, as a starting point for progress. But discoveries like this force us to reconsider. Because sometimes, the oldest things we find are not the simplest. Sometimes, they are the most profound. And the real question is not just who created the oldest mummy, but what they understood about life that we no longer do. And if that sounds distant, almost abstract, then bring it closer. Imagine you are standing inside one of those early Chincharo settlements. The ocean is loud, the wind carries salt through the air, and nothing about this place suggests permanence. There are no monuments, no cities, no written records. And yet, inside small, simple shelters, something extraordinary is happening. A body is being prepared, not buried, not abandoned, but transformed. Carefully. Methodically. With a level of attention that feels almost scientific. Because what becomes clear, the deeper you look, is that this was not random experimentation. The Chinchorro did not simply try once and stop. They repeated the process again and again, refining it over generations. Early mummies were relatively crude, bodies dried, sometimes wrapped, occasionally reinforced. But then something changed. The technique evolved into what researchers now call the black mummies, where the body was completely disassembled. Skin removed. Organs extracted. The skeleton cleaned and strengthened with sticks. The body then rebuilt layer by layer, using ash, clay, and natural fibers, before being painted with a dark manganese coating. Think about what that requires. Not just effort, but understanding. You would need to know which parts decay first, which structures collapse, how to reconstruct a human form so that it holds together over time. This is not accidental knowledge. This is observation turned into method. And then, centuries later, the process shifts again. The red mummies appear. This time, instead of fully dismantling the body, the Chinchorro make precise incisions, remove internal organs, and treat the remains from within. The exterior is preserved more naturally. The face is carefully reconstructed, often with a mask, and painted with red ochre. It's less invasive, but more refined, more controlled. So now the question becomes even more unsettling. Why improve something like this? What drives a society to invest centuries into perfecting the preservation of the dead? One explanation suggests ritual evolution. Over time, practices become more symbolic, more sophisticated. But that still doesn't explain the consistency. These methods weren't isolated experiments, they were shared, repeated across different groups along the coast. Which implies communication, teaching, a transfer of knowledge that somehow remains stable without writing, without formal institutions. And then there's something even stranger. When scientists began to analyze the chemical composition of these mummies in detail, they found patterns that didn't quite match simple preservation. Certain treatments seemed to slow bacterial activity in ways that suggest an intuitive grasp of decomposition. Not a modern understanding, of course, but something functional, something effective. It raises a possibility that feels uncomfortable to consider. That these people, thousands of years ago, may have developed a practical relationship with death that was far more advanced than we assume. Not technologically advanced, but conceptually. They didn't just accept death. They interacted with it, managed it, studied it through repetition. Now, another theory begins to form. What if mummification, for the Chinchorro, wasn't originally about belief at all? What if it started as a response to a problem? In an environment where bodies decompose rapidly under certain conditions but preserve under others, it's possible that early natural mummification was observed. A body left in the right place might not decay as expected. It might remain recognizable, present. Imagine witnessing that for the first time. Someone you lost, still there. Not gone in the way you expected. That moment alone could change everything. It could create a question: can this be repeated? Controlled? Improved? From that perspective, the entire practice begins to look less like ritual and more like early experimentation driven by grief and curiosity. But then comes another twist. Genetic studies of the Chinchorro population reveal something subtle but important. Despite living in small, scattered groups, there was enough interaction between communities to maintain genetic diversity. They were not isolated in the way we might imagine. They shared space, resources, and possibly ideas. This opens the door to a different kind of explanation. That mummification wasn't developed by a single group, but emerged collectively, an idea that spread, adapted, and stabilized across a network of communities. Not through written knowledge, but
through observation and imitation.
A kind of early cultural transmission that functioned almost like a decentralized system of innovation. And yet, even with all this, one question refuses to disappear. Why did it stop? Because at some point, after thousands of years,
the Chinchorro abandoned mummification entirely. No gradual decline. No clear transition. The practice simply fades from the archaeological record. The knowledge, if that's what it was, disappears. Some researchers point to environmental changes.
Shifts in climate could have altered living conditions, making such labor-intensive
practices unsustainable. Others suggest cultural transformation. That new beliefs replaced old ones, rendering mummification unnecessary. But there's no definitive answer. Just silence.
And that silence might be the most revealing part of the entire mystery.
Because it suggests that whatever drove this practice
was not permanent. It was tied to a specific moment in human experience, a set of conditions, pressures, and perceptions that no
longer exist in the same way. Something aligned, briefly, in human history, and then moved on. Now imagine holding one of
these mummies, not literally, but in your mind.
A human being who lived over 7,000 years ago. Preserved not by accident, but by intention.
By people who had no written language, no formal science, no recorded history, and yet managed to do
something that still captures our attention today. It forces a different kind of reflection. Not about them, but about us. We often
assume that knowledge moves in a straight line. That we are always more advanced than those who came before.
But the Chinchorro challenged that idea. They remind us that understanding can take different forms. That insight doesn't always look like technology. And that sometimes, the past holds answers we don't even realize we've lost.
Because the oldest mummy on Earth is not just
the oldest preserved body.
It's evidence of a mindset, a way of engaging with life, death, and memory that feels unfamiliar to
us now.
And maybe that's why it still matters.
Not because it solves a mystery, but because it leaves one open.